Thought I wasn't going to be here, didn't you? Uh-huh. Come on, get in here, sit down, hang out with the teach a little bit before the bell rings. The boss is off playing somewhere. Not all of the students, know that I'm here in the classroom early. So we got to drag our feet a little bit, wait for them, wait for the bell, wait for everybody to get here. Tardy as usual. Sharky's probably in the closet. Bonnie, no idea where Aaron is. He might be hanging out there. Haven't seen him yet. He hasn't checked in. Wade, Sandy, y'all are here. Morning. Don't know what's going on with Steve. Freedom with Steve Nichols. No idea. Um, like I've told people before, I'm an independent contractor. I'm not part of the network. I'm just on the network. Um, so hopefully he's okay. Everything's all right in his world. I got no memo. I don't even have the ability to go onto the Facebook or whatever and tell you guys that, hey, isn't here yet. So we'll leave that to him and Larry. It is their network, not mine. I just figured I'd pop on here a little early. Got a request from one of our listeners, class member, said, "Hey, why don't you just get into the class a little early and ramble a bit?" For those of you who do not know, I've already set up a Road to Concord Rumble page. More and more of you are starting to come on and watch us there, and I'm hearing from a lot of you that you appreciate it, you like it. Um, for those who are watching there, I appreciate that too. It helps us. It'll help me get that established so that if something ever does happen where the social media that Freedom Networks is using gets cranky and bans them, I'll still be there. You'll know where to find me. Also with my blog page, theroadtoconcord.com. You guys hopefully are learning that I use that to support the show. You'll find your show notes already posted wherever you're watching, Facebook, Twitch, wherever. You'll find that your show notes are already up. And like I said, I'm just waiting for the bell today. I think the bell's going to ring at 8 o'clock today, not at 8:05. But if you follow along, if you're following, especially I know that for sure on Rumble, if you go to Rumble and you have an account and you find the Road to Concord, you're looking for the version where it's all one word. That's the actual channel. If you see the Road to Concord where it's all separate words, those are individual shows. If you'll subscribe to the actual channel, the Road to Concord, all one word, and it's one word because it's part of our URL, web destination address or whatever. You subscribe there whenever we do a show, even if it's unscheduled, you'll get an email or a notification on your phone or whatever. You'll be notified that, hey, that idiot Joe's on the air, before or after or whenever he wasn't scheduled to be. Or it'll remind you that we've started the show, on time, depending on how that goes. I think Twitch and Facebook does this, but I don't always see it all the time. And then you still have to be following that particular show on Twitch and Facebook or that channel to get the notification. But for those of you out there who get a little cranky because, hey, Joe's asking me to go to another new location. Yeah, guys, if I'm going to take the time to put on this show and I'm going to throw it to where I think it's most beneficial to the show, if you're getting something out of this show, out of my efforts and my work, and I'm not asking you for a penny, and you don't have it in you to just go to where it is I want to put the show, you're missing the point. At least the point of this show. It's a little thing to ask from people, but I know that I've already heard some people are cranky about it. They don't like it. Hey, here's the bell. So let's give everybody a chance to get on board. I do have a good show for you planned today. We got show notes, man. Got a slideshow for you. Come on, get in here. Everybody sit down, settle in. We'll get going all official like in here in just a second. It's going to be one of those days. Welcome to the Road to Concord. I am your host / professor, Joe Bakanovic. Professor was ascribed to me by one of our classmates. That would be Aaron Spikes. I didn't do that. It's not self-appointed. He did that. So either congratulate him and thank him or spitballs and paper balls at him, not me. You are watching us on freedomnetworks.com, networks with an X. Networks. That's because we're rednecks and that's the way we roll. If you happen to live in one of those blue areas that think that you're all that in a bag of poo poo because that you live in a blue area and that makes you smarter than us, try me. Anyhow, we are simulcast on several different locations. You find us on freedomnetworks.com, upper left hand corner, FNTV. Just click on that when we're live. There we are. Or you can go to Freedom Networks on Facebook, or you can go to Freedom Networks on Twitch, or you can go to Freedom with Steve Nichols on Facebook. That is the show that usually precedes mine. Steve is the owner of our network. And for me, you will find the Road to Concord and all those places, plus Rumble. Rumble's my preferred location, namely because Rumble was built for people like me who say things that the progressive left, the political left in America, don't like and will ban me and censor me and restrict me and throttle me and do all sorts of nasty things to me because they don't like my voice. And then they turn around and complain when they get fired from Twitter. Oh, he's such a mean guy. He's just doing to you what you do to everybody else you don't like. Hypocrisy, huh? Good for the goose, good for the game. Anyhow, I throw the Road to Concord to Rumble. I would love for you to be there watching me, but I understand that's at odds with Freedom Networks. At least know that I'm there so that if anything ever happens in the future, Dan Bongino will have Joe firmly in his bosom and him and the boys will not get rid of our show. We'll still be there. The Road to Concord on Rumble. You can also download our podcasts on Podbean, BEAN is in November, iHeart, and Spotify. Just look for the Road to Concord. I upload each show every day after the show's over. It's the first thing I do. Up, into the cloud so that you guys can download it and listen to it. I have been getting some commentary and feedback about our Rumble show. People seem to be liking that. I thank you very much. I've gotten several really cool emails as of recently. I still need to answer them. I've got them flagged. Honest to God, I really don't know what to tell those people. They humbled me a great deal. So did T-Rex yesterday when he called. I really didn't know what to make of that. I know how a lot of people think I come across. But when people tell me I'm actually helping them and teaching them, man, I feel like a little child who's in a great big grown up world and I'm being given credit for something I didn't think I could do. Didn't know I could do it. But today we're going to go ahead and do some of that anyway. We're going to get on it. Today's show is going to be, it's Teaching Tuesday, y'all know. We're going to be doing a class on science. She blinded me with science. Don't do that. Charlie, you recovered from your whooping? Yeah, and I'm a little pissed off, and you ain't gonna be even getting close to thinking you're gonna sing. We've had enough of that with Steve. Oh, whoop up on you, you try that, miss. You just get over there and turn them knobs and press those buttons and shut up. All right. For those of you who don't know him, that's Charlie. He's our producer. He is Aaron Spike's best buddy. They get along great. They have coffee and donuts every morning before the show. You're welcome, Aaron. I know that'll go over well. Anyhow, science class today. Specifically about what is it? What's the word mean? How did we get there? The history. Who developed it? How was it developed? I mean, we're going to deep dive into science. And then we're going to talk about scientific method, how it's supposed to work, how it's being used nowadays, as well as its limitations. What? Science has limitations? Yeah, a lot of them once you understand what you're dealing with. But, we got to get going on that here now. So I guess it's time for class to start. We've drug our feet. It's almost 8:05 for the regulars should be here by now. If they're tardy, they get a note. I'll send them to the principal's office and Charlie can paddle them after class. If you're going to go get paddled by Charlie, you better understand he's probably going to enjoy that a little bit too much, which is probably TMI for the most of you. But, not my problem. You guys are the ones going to the principal's office, not me. So without further ado, thank you, William. Says he's listening on Rumble. Awesome. Class, history, description, and limitations of science. Science. Man, maybe we should get together and see if we can't make the perfect female. Got to put a bra on her head, right? I think that's how that went. I don't know. Y'all know TV better than me, so you're going to have to come up with that. Second slide. Originally, science was known as natural philosophy. What? Philosophy? Yeah, You got to remember philosophy, phileo, all you Bible students out there, love, brotherly love of osophy, knowledge, love of knowledge. Wow, who'd have thunk it? Natural philosophy, the love of natural things, of learning about natural things. Yeah, that's literally what it was. Before some people came along and said, I don't like that definition. I've got to change it. Why do you have to change it? Well, I'll explain as we get going because it got in the way of what they really wanted. So, oh God, Joe, this again. Hey, man, if you go to your show notes real quick, I got a long one for you this time, PDF file. I don't steal anybody's work. I fully credit them in the show notes, and I try to do so during the show. I'll let you know where I get everything. Most of what I grab for you and I throw up on show notes, I do that without always reading everything in them for a reason. I start reading along far enough to know, yep, okay, that aligns with what I already know to be true. Oh my gosh, Joe, you're just picking things that align with yourself. Isn't that a fallacy? Not if it's already been tested and proven true. It's like saying, well, this blog page right here says the sky is colloquially blue and the grass is colloquially green. Oh, well, you can't use that one without testing it all the way. That'd be a fallacy. Wrong. I've already done that work. So I can use that page because they're generally in line with where I want them to go. This is why sometimes in the show notes, you'll find a few things here and there that don't necessarily agree with what I believe and teach, but that's okay. That's part of how we find truth, triangulation. If we were all lockstep on the same thing, none of us would be thinking. John Ford, stay to the end of the show. I will explain to you why I say your God is science. All right, natural philosophy. This is from Wikipedia. It says natural philosophy, or philosophy of nature, from Latin philosophia, naturalis, which also derived from the Greek, is the philosophical study of physics. Whoa, that is nature and the physical universe, that which we can see and touch. It was dominant before the development of modern science. That was before we started calling it science. We called it natural philosophy. From the ancient world, at least since Aristotle, until the 19th century, natural philosophy was the common term for the study of physics, of nature, a broad term that included botany, zoology, anthropology, and chemistry, as well as what we now call physics. It was in the 19th century that the concept of science received its modern shape, with different subjects within science emerging, such as astronomy, biology, and physics. Institutions and communities devoted to science were founded. Isaac Newton's book, Philosophia Naturalis Principia Mathematica, 1687, English, Mathematical Principles of Natural Philosophy, reflects the use of the term natural philosophy in the 17th century. Even in the 19th century, the work that helped define much of modern physics before the title Treatise on Natural Philosophy in 1867. The article continues. In the German tradition, natural philosophy, philosophy of nature, see, there's that Germans can turn everything into one word, persisted into the 18th and 19th centuries as an attempt to achieve a speculative unity of nature and spirit. Spirit? Yeah, hold on to that. We'll get to that. After rejecting the scholastic tradition and replacing Aristotelian metaphysics along with those of dogmatic churchmen with Cantonian rationalism, some of the greatest names in German philosophy are associated with this movement, including Goethe, Hegel, and Schelling. Natural philosophy was associated with Romanticism and a view that regarded the natural world as a kind of giant organism, as opposed to the philosophical approach of figures such as John Locke and others espousing a more mechanical philosophy of the world, regarding it as more like a machine. Okay, stop right here. I'm going to leave this slide up for a minute. You've got to be in class every day. Do you remember Woodrow Wilson, who said, we've got to reject John Locke because he had a mechanical philosophy of government? Well, that was considered an advance at the time that that happened. The idea of looking at the universe as a living being, like the force, the universe is alive. Well, that was rejected by science. But Woodrow Wilson wanted to go backwards. Woodrow Wilson, the progressive, going progress forward by going backward. Yeah, now you understand why I tell you progressives are, the 180-degree rule. Whatever they say, they mean the opposite. And that's exactly what Woodrow Wilson did. He went back to Hegel and Schelling and people like that and said, well, universe is a living organism, so is government. That type of thinking. But that's progress, when actually if you were looking at things objectively, mankind at the time was thinking John Locke was progress. Wilson didn't like that. He wanted to go backwards, which makes him a reactionary, which means he's not a progressive. So why did he call himself anyway? Just wanted to point that out because those are two fireflies that are most definitely connected. Now, the development of science, as we know it today, was facilitated by the rise of Christianity. More specifically, the Reformation of Christianity. What? Yes. Bet you didn't know that one. No, we're not going to dive into it too much, but we are going to take a quick look at this. The role of Christianity in the development of science. This is an article in your show notes. I'm going to quote heavily from it. Then I'm going to explain to you why this is important because this article hits on it. It's an article written by an individual that's explaining an argument going back and forth between a secularist and a Christian. Stark's the Christian. And Stark argues that Christian theology was essential to the rise of science. He asks some interesting questions. Why did real science develop in Europe at this time? Why did it not develop anywhere else? What exactly is Professor Stark referring to when discussing science? He defines science as being not merely technology. A society does not have science simply because it can build sailing ships, smelt iron, or eat off porcelain dishes. Science is a method utilized in organized efforts to formulate explanations of nature, always subject to modifications and corrections through the systematic observations. Science consists of theory and research. This is Mr. Stark's definition. It's not far from what mine would be. For Stark, achievements of other civilizations, amazing though they were, do not constitute science, being better described as engineering, learning, and simple knowledge. Until they were linked to testable theories, these observations remain merely facts. I'm going to stop reading at this point from the article. You'll find this article in your show notes. I have linked you to it on Rumble and in Twitch and Facebook feeds. All you have to do is go to it, look for it, you will find it. I've already got the title and everything up there. Where I want to stop here is for this reason. Mr. Stark is correct about something, at least in my opinion. It says that a society that has just learned how to manipulate physics or make use of the things that they observe in the world, that does not constitute science. So when we're told that the Chinese and the Arabs invented science, not according to the modern definition and understanding of the word, they didn't. What they did was exactly what Mr. Stark is talking about here. They better understood how to use it. It's called engineering, learning, simple observation, knowledge. But this is not science, not as we understand it today. There's a reason for that. I continue with the article. Again, according to Professor Stark, the rise of science was the natural outgrowth of Christian doctrine. Nature exists because it was created by God, by the Creator. To love and honor God, one must fully appreciate the wonders of his handiwork. Moreover, because God is perfect, his handiwork functions in accord with immutable principles. By the full use of our God given powers of reason and observation, we ought to be able to discover these principles. These critical ideas, according to Professor Stark, were why science arose in Europe and nowhere else. Stark is not saying that Christian theology was by itself sufficient for the development of science, saying it's not enough, not by itself. What he, Mr. Stark, however, maintains is that a particular concept of the Creator was necessary in order for science to develop. Stark also points out that once properly launched, science developed its own momentum. So, my encouragement to readers is that they should go after truth, for it is still the truth which will set us free. Reading of Rodney Stark is a great place to begin. That was the comment of that particular author. Now, let me explain what Mr. Stark is talking about. Prior to the rise, and specifically the Reformation, after the church broke free from the Catholic Church, after the general Christianity, the Protestants, that's when you start seeing a rise in what we think of today as modern science. There's a reason for this. Christianity believed in an unchanging God, an unchanging creator. That's what Micah, I am Yahweh, I do not change. That's important because prior to this, God was very paganistic in nature, the concept of deity, in pagan being those who do not believe in the God of the Bible, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, different gods of the Goyim, of the Gentiles. They believed in gods who were fickle, very human in nature. You could not guarantee that what worked today was going to work tomorrow, because the gods might change their minds or be angry or just have indigestion that day and things won't work that day. Very mystic in nature, in origin, which is part of why John Locke went toward mechanical understanding of nature rather than as an organism, because organisms do crazy things sometimes. And that's why we broke from that in the development of science. This is why Mr. Wilson wants to go backwards, because then he can justify whatever the heck his indigestion makes him feel like doing today. He may not have told you that. He may not have even been consciously aware of it, but that's what was going on there. So it's the Christian worldview, and it's the Judeo-Christian. Eventually, we might have seen science develop out of Judaism had it remained intact in its own country. But the Jewish Orthodox Judaism, one of its hindrances is it tended to focus only on faith and religion. It didn't look at the rest of the world. We're not going to get into all of that. That could take us down another rabbit hole we could spend a whole show on. But maybe one day we will, but not today. The Judeo-Christian ethic, the Christian ethic, the Protestant Christian ethic is what led to science as we know it. And if you will research the people we think of as the founding fathers and mothers of modern science, you're going to find out almost every one of them was Christian. And in your show notes, I copied part of a wiki. I link you to Wikipedia, not WikiLeaks. Duh. You're not doing too good today. Shut up, homeboy, or I'll beat you down again. Anyhow, Wikipedia, and a list of just some of the Christian natural scientists, natural philosophers, scientists. And you're going to find Mr. Kevin Bacon, you're going to find Newton, John Locke, you're going to find all sorts of names you recognize because they're given Pasteur. All these people who developed all of this stuff. You're going to find all those names right there. Christians, believers. So that was kind of important. I thought we would throw that in there, especially since, without going into an apologetics argument for the following statements, which I assure you, I can make a strong argument for each and every one of these. The rise of the Judeo-Christian ethic led directly to the development of Western civilization, the development of the scientific method, the development of natural law, natural rights theory, which is political theory, the development of the theory of the social compact, the development of capitalism in the free market, the rule of law under a written constitution, and liberty based on individual natural rights. And before anybody starts going up and down about capitalism and the free market, say Christians bad. No, because Mr. Adams, Christian, who helped develop this theory, said it was dependent on the Protestant work ethic. Protestant? That is a Catholic term. Protestant work ethic means it must be attached to the capitalism and the free market. Pagans, under the term or name or label of progressives, move in and remove that. And now capitalism is just laissez-faire. Anybody do what you want. We've paganized it. Oh my God, the Christian idea doesn't work. See how bad capitalism is? No, it's a perverted form of it. It's an apostate form of the free market. Been formed and shaped by the pagans. No wonder it doesn't work. Duh. But things have to be tested on their own merit. And right now, I'm pretty sure if you're a pagan, I'm insulting you. Too bad. Science says this is the truth. This is the natural result of your worldview, your philosophy. If you don't like it, study everything objectively and choose a better way of going. If you don't want to, then just accept the consequences. Here's where things start to go off the rails. As what we understand as modern science starts to develop, we get a bunch of people who, mostly because they are, there's a group who want to reject the Judeo-Christian ethic. They want to reject religion altogether. These people saw the development as science as proof that the creator does not exist. Well, science can't prove that, but don't pay no attention to that. It gave them the vehicle they needed to beat down the religious people. So these folks seized on science as a means by which they could force their worldview onto the whole of society. How progressive of them. This is when they divided true knowledge from fake knowledge according to quote unquote scientific principles. In short, they defined true knowledge as that which deals with what can be sensed, and fake knowledge as assigned to those things cannot be sensed. Hence, the introduction of nonsense meaning fake or unscientific knowledge. Uh-huh. Yeah, you're going to have a couple of articles in your show notes that go through this one. One of them is a lengthy article, very good article, excellent article. I read it. It goes through all of this, what was going on with the introduction of nonsense. So hence, our modern definition of science and the scientific method. This is where it comes from. Science, according to the modern Merriam-Webster's dictionary, is a knowledge or a system of knowledge covering general truths or the operation of general laws, especially as obtained and tested through the scientific method. Such knowledge or such a system of knowledge concerned with physical world and its phenomena. The physical world, natural science, those things you can sense, see, taste, hear, touch, some other way feel. A department of systemized knowledge as an object of study, the science of theology. Like for me, I'm a sociologist. So that's a specific form of science, specific branch, narrow field. Then there's a couple other definitions there. But what is the scientific method? Principles and procedures for the systematic pursuit of knowledge involving the recognition and formulation of a problem, the collection of data through observations and experiment, and the formulation and testing of hypotheses. Hold on to this because we're going to come back to it and show that this modern definition contradicts the modern understanding and applications of science, thereby defeating what we think of as modern science as fallacious. What? Yeah, gonna get some good eating here today. A little information about the history or the etymology of the word science might help us to see how this meaning has been changed over time. Real quick. Why are you doing all this, Joe? This stuff's boring. It hurts my head. It's not useful. It is extremely useful, especially when you live in a world where words don't mean things anymore. You've lost the meaning of the words. Why are we going to go back and look at how they changed? Because what we're going to see is that the spirit of the modern progressive was alive and well throughout all of history. We went from natural philosophy or philosophy of the natural sciences to science for a reason, and it was political in nature. Yeah, that's why we do this. So, pick back up. Science. This is in your show notes. This is from Etymological Dictionary. Etymology, the history or the evolution of a word. Where is it first used? Why is it used that way? How's it used? Blah, 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 blah. It says the mid 14th century, a state or fact of knowing. What is known? Knowledge of something acquired by study. It's information. Also, assurance of knowledge, certitude, certainty. How can we, that we're sure of what we know, why we know it? From the old French science, knowledge, learning, application, corpus of human knowledge. So why are we going to change it? Why do we have to change it the way we understand it today? Why did we have to go to this understanding of science as opposed to natural philosophy? Because if you understand what natural philosophy meant in the Latin and Greek, they're the same. Same thing as this word. So from the Latin scientia, knowledge or knowing, expertness from science, genitive scientists, intelligent, skilled, present. And basically, science used to mean just people who studied and learned the world. Natural philosophy, literally. So natural philosophy would just be philosophy of nature. The original notion in the Latin verb probably is to separate one thing from another. Ah, here we go. To distinguish or else to incise. So as we get going, what we're going to find, that's what the word originally meant, science. That's what it used to mean. Same thing as natural philosophy. Why do we have to change the word? Because we changed the definition of science without telling anybody. See, this definition, that doesn't fit with the Webster's definition. Remember, because this here doesn't tell you it's got to be a certain process, that it has to be of the physical things, only of things that you can touch. This definition is more encompassing than the definition you have of science today. There's the key. That's the whole point. They've narrowed the definition of science to suit a purpose, an agenda. So today, most of us think that anything outside of our senses is nonsense. Literally, that's where our word comes from. It was developed by the people who were trying to separate physics, science with the things you can touch, see, hear, smell, whatever, from those that you can't. So things that are called nonsense, they're not in the proper realm of science, according to most people today. They would think that way. You've been conditioned to think that way. There's a problem with that. We're going to get to it today. Big problem with that. So right on here, however, part of the motivation for creating this sense versus nonsense divide was the work being done by people like Freud and Marx. What? Yes. There were a group of natural philosophers that at that time, back in the 17, 1800s, they objected to such work being called science. They didn't think that psychiatry, psychology, economics, these things here that they couldn't put their hands on, they didn't like that being called science. That was all just pseudoscience, fake knowledge. It wasn't real. They weren't serious thinkers. Guess what got caught up in that? Theology. What we would think of as, oh, it's supernatural. Yeah, that got caught up in that as well, on purpose. Their solution, the solution for these people who objected, was to create a philosophical or quote unquote scientific argument which excluded the work to which they objected. So, what we're going to do is say, well, that's nonsense. I can't sense the psychiatry. I can't sense economics. So, that's nonsense. That's not real science. That's not true knowledge. The problem with that is the definition of science as we have it today is fallacious. What? You got to stay in class, folks. We covered that fallacy on a Fallacy Friday already. When you set up a definition or an argument specifically to exclude other possibilities that do apply, that's fallacy. It's excluding the precedent or deliberate falsification. Either way, you're setting up the argument so that your side has to win. Must. There's no other logical option. That's a fallacy. And there's actually many names for this one. Sorry. I grabbed two. But the whole definition that we have today, the definition that we read just a few minutes ago from Webster's dictionary, it's fallacious. Because it says the only thing that science is dealing with are those things that we can sense. Well, economics is not something we can sense. We can only see the result of it and then try to understand whether or not we really understand what's going on. Try to figure that out. Things like psychiatry, same thing. Human behavior, same thing. These are not physical science. And this is well known. This has been known from the beginning. It's just that the side that prevailed here forced that definition on all of society. And because they told the lie big enough, long enough, now we accept the lie. So everything that we think we know about science is based on a fallacious assumption, fallacious definition. And what have I taught you? If you base your whole argument or your whole understanding, your whole concept on a fallacious precept, your foundation is fallacious. It's not right. It's wrong. It's bad logic. What's that mean about everything else built upon on top of it? Might not be wrong, but you can't trust it. You should question all of it. But we don't. Remember Fauci, oh, science, science, science. Another method used to reject the work being done in areas such as psychiatry and social theory was the notion of falsifiability. What? Yeah, according to the scientific method, anything that could not be falsified and tested was not science and did not lead to true knowledge. And this is why the existence of God cannot be true knowledge in science, because you can't falsify the existence of God. Guess what? You can't falsify the non-existence of God either. So when science says there is no creator, it's a hypocrite. Gee, philosophy, logic, they a mother, ain't they? Conveniently, this also excluded religion and all matters considered spiritual. Subsequently, these things were labeled as supernatural, outside the natural world, natural being physical world, and naturally were excluded for all true knowledge, aka science. Okay, so just as a quick aside, if you are into science and you're still Joe, you're still crazy, science is right, then where's your freaking dark matter? You can't see it, can't touch it, can't taste it, you can't test it, but you are absolutely certain it's there. Why? You took it on faith. Oops. Faith and science? They don't go together. Oh my God. Uh huh. Little philosopher comes along with a little bit of understanding of logic and he throws your whole scientific world into a mess, as it should be, because science is just a tool. We've turned it into something more. Hold on, John. We're getting to you at the end of the class today. I explain it to you. This is from one of those lengthy arguments, articles rather, that I put in your show notes for you, explaining the back and forth of all this. I pulled this pull note from it because it's a really good one. Down at the note bottom, see, I credit it. Science, Non-Science, and Nonsense Toward the Legitimate Science Classroom by Paul Drake, October 1st, 2015. I don't want to take or ever credit for anybody else's work, ever, ever, ever. I don't need to. I screw up enough on my own. But from this article, it says, by the end of the 17th century, however, scientists had come to disregard the distinction between understanding and know-how as a viable demarcation line. Newton, for example, is famous for rejecting attempts to understand the cause of gravity or to answer why questions about it. Instead, he remained content to describe mathematically how gravitation functioned, whatever it was. He didn't care to define what it was or where it came from or what caused it. He just wanted to know how it worked. The result was that scientists, self-appointed at this point, came to regard the distinction between science and non-science as the distinction between infallible knowledge and fallible opinion. Oh, they're using fallibility in another way. They're saying true science can never be wrong. Now we're getting somewhere. Hold on to that. Put a pin in it. We're gonna come back to it. Because falsifiability, in the true sense of scientific method, means that I can make a theory that says, okay, this, I can falsify the argument and then test that. And that is not what these people who were trying to corral the definition of science meant. They meant that it's got to be perfect. It cannot be questioned. Well, this article continues. It says such a view of the scientific enterprise could not withstand the overwhelming theme of history of science, namely that science theories are not infallible. They are fallible, subject to correction and open revision. You remember, eggs are good, eggs are bad, eggs are good, eggs are bad, butter good, butter bad, butter good, butter bad, red meat good, red meat bad, red meat good. We've gone through this over and over again. Guess what else we've gone through? Global warming, global heating, global warming, global heating. Oh crap, I need it politically. Global climate change. That's what all that mess is. Idiots. Well, the article says if theories were not imperfect, then the history of science would be in the odd position of declaring every revised or replaced scientific theory unscientific. This would render the history of science the history of non-science. The clear implication was that scientific belief, because it is not infallible, ultimately is a species of opinion. OMG, what did he just say? He said all scientific knowledge is a form of opinion. And he is 100% correct by definition. And what have I taught you about definition? If the definition is sound and you argue with it, you're irrational. Now, you understand why I went through the etymology of the word science. The definition of science today has been narrowly defined. So it's still a definition. But now you got a fallacious definition. Ah, Joe, you told me definitions were the most solid thing you can build on them. They are. Now you know why I went through the etymology for you. I went back to what the word meant before somebody came along and said, oh, you were born male? XY chromosome? No, you can be female. Here, take these hormones. Have this surgery. See, now you're female. No, you're not. you're a mutilated male by definition. What we did today with the etymology was to drive it all the way back to where the word began. That's the definition I hold to, because it was not changed for political purposes or an agenda. Now you understand why I do that. And that original definition, just knowing knowledge, understanding truth, that still works because that's the philosophy of nature, natural philosophy. Got no problem with that. They changed the meaning so that they could exclude anything and everything they didn't like. And now, if you do anything in those worlds, what we call soft sciences today, whenever you got to start putting an adjective in front of it, you got a problem. Same thing if you're theological. When you got to start putting adjectives in front of it, you got a problem. So you see why I walked you through the definitions? They're important. Etymology was important. Now, if you're researching something that's important to you, always do the etymological research if it's the first time you've done it. I was well aware of this already. This is why I brought it to you. I've been down this road many times. I'm bringing you what I've already found and throwing up sources that I skimmed through last night and said, yep, that one will work. That one won't mislead the class. Might not be word for word what I would say, but then, differences of opinions, same capital T truth. We're in the same ballpark, maybe sitting on different rows or different sections of the bleachers, but we're in the same place. So cool. Science is opinion. So we shut down this entire nation and destroyed the world over an opinion. Yes. Learn it, love it, live it. Class continues. But this issue, though forced on the majority of us by our schools, has never set well with the more rational philosophers among us. In other words, the modern definition of science never stopped being disputed. The people who understand how better to define it just lost because they don't control the schools or the media. And then these philosophers, they are well aware that our modern definition of science is fallacious. They know that. The problem is, no one can seem to define what science actually is, let alone this entire scientific method. This is true. It's one of those things like pornography. I can't define it, but I know it when I see it. Well, apparently, some of us can. Others, what's wrong with pedophilia? Why are you doing this? This is a useless class. Why are you doing that, Joe? Why are you reading these stories? Because it's wrong, and I know it's wrong when I see it. We couldn't get through to certain people yesterday. I have attached two very good but somewhat lengthy articles about this debate in your show notes. If you're interested, you should go read them because they go over this ongoing, to this day, the ongoing argument over how to define science. Which, once again, if you don't have a definition that's set and published, how can you refer to it? Science is just a specialized form of logic. I've told you this before. As such, it is subject to the same basic rules. You must clearly define your terms, your definition. We don't have a clear definition of what science is or the scientific method. So we're already starting out crippled. But we've been taught that science can never be wrong, except it is. We just read how that happens. Hold on. This is part of John Ford's question, why I call it a religion. Your God can never be wrong, but logic can be. It's often wrong. I'm starting to see that yet. Light bulbs going off. We'll connect them. Properly define the question at hand. What exactly is it that you want to study? Are you going to study one thing, two things at the same time? The relationship between it? You got to narrow that down as narrowly as possible. You don't want to have too many things in the soup. Okay, we're looking for tomato soup, pure as possible. That makes it easier to study with less likelihood of problems being in. But like with physics, that can be fairly narrowly defined. But now things like the economy, and you can't narrow down one thing at a time because one thing that changes in an economic system changes everything else. Problem is in physics, we forget to account for the fact that the butterfly flapping in the Amazon can affect what's going to happen in Central Europe. So no, it doesn't. Yeah, it does. You just don't know how. So you exclude it. You have to account for these things. You need to narrowly define the question at hand, explain it. Then you have to devise a theory that thoroughly explains this question at hand. Then you have to design tests that effectively test this theory. Then you got to perform these tests and objectively analyze your results. Objectively. Then you have to draw sound, valid, and rational conclusions. Allow for the fact that every assumption in your process introduces another level of uncertainty to those conclusions. So if I have to, first of all, assume I'm using the right definition of science, and then assume I actually have the all of the parameters of the question in hand, there's two assumptions, and they are assumptions no matter what you think, they're always assumptions. Three, I have to devise a theory that thoroughly explains that question at hand. Well, because I don't know all the parameters, the theory isn't going to test just that, the one that I'm trying to focus on. So I've got three levels of error. Then I have to test that effectively, design the tests. There's four. Then I have to perform the tests objectively and analyze your results. That's actually, there's one, two, three, four, five, and six. Huh? I have to perform the tests, which aren't going to account for everything I didn't know about. And then I have to objectively analyze my results. Well, I am already biased. So there's two things right there, not one. So there's six. I got to draw sound, valid, rational conclusions. Well, let's just say I do everything else right. We still have six. Six levels of uncertainty that you have to factor into all your results. And science never does that. Why? Well, because you're questioning their God if you do that. Science has limits. This is because science is only as good as the data put into the equation and the interpretation of the results. And everything we just covered. How tight, how strong, how hard, how narrowly defined is everything. Even if all possible data is collected and entered correctly, results is still going to be nothing more than a level of certainty. Science, by its very nature, cannot prove anything any more than pure logic can prove anything. All it yields is a percentage of likely outcome, a result or a cause. Percentage of certainty, a level of certainty. That's all it'll ever give you. Some examples of where these limits are ignored. Fingerprints, facial recognition, DNA samples. Mostly because too few of us recognize and understand the many limiting factors that contribute, whoops, typo, to a scientific finding or conclusion. I have some pictures to show you what I'm talking about. There's a fingerprint. These are the Galton points. So the more of those points, the more certain I can be that I have the right person. You created that fingerprint. But look on the right. It's the exact same fingerprint, but it's been distorted. So it distorts the pattern. So if I want to do a fingerprint analysis, I not only have to have X number of points, but I also have to account for the fact that it might be a distorted print, like you pressed on something harder than you normally would. As opposed to just touching it, you squeezed it, which would flatten out your fingerprint. Because if it was just a computer that had not been taught to look for this, it would look at those two prints and say they're not the same when they are. But there are also things that could account for them not being the same. And what if I had fewer points? Then it quite easily could be somebody else's fingerprint. It all depends on the amount of data that you have. The more data, the more objectively analyzed, accounting for it being squashed or skewed or smeared or smudged, the higher the level of certainty. But if you've ever been in a courtroom, they will never tell you that that's guaranteed that fingerprint is that person. They don't do that. Why? They understand the limits of science as opposed to the certainty of law. So they'll give you a percentage or a ratio or some sort of number of likelihood, 1 in 9 million chances that this is another person. And then the jury uses that to analyze the facts of the case at hand. Same thing here. Facial recognition. Look at the pictures. So the computer says, yep, I'm 100% sure the forehead is this woman. I'm only 91% sure of the nose, 94% sure of the mouth, 94% sure of the eyes. Say, oh, well, look, man, it's 91% sure that that's a woman. Nope. No, it's less sure than that. What? Yeah. See, now a facial an analyst, 100% scanning data, whatever. Don't let this fool you. So 91% and 94% and 94%, there are margins of error. There's a 9, 6, and a 6. That's actually much less than 91% certainty. This is why we should have paid attention to probabilities and percentages when we were in school. And this is how they lie to us. They'll show you this picture and say, see, the computer's 91% sure it's her. No, it isn't. Somewhere down in the 70s, if I did my math right, 70s or 80s. Huh? Yep. That's a lot less certain. I could not use this data to prove that's her in a court of law. Not if I was being faithful to the science. And yet this is fed to you, or things like this are fed to you all the time. Like with Fauci and your mask. He got on national TV and lied to you about that mask. It did not protect a single one of you, and it still doesn't. I can prove it using real science, as in objective science. Science that'll tell you the facts of the case. All the facts, not just the ones he cherry picked. Here's another one. DNA. What? Yes. This is one of the ways DNA is presented when we're trying to compare them. Now, in this case, the crime scene is supposed to match suspect number 2. Doesn't always work this way. If I only have, let's say at the crime scene, the DNA, for whatever reason, I only have part of that data, I might not be able to match a suspect. And then in some cases, if the DNA I have from the crime scene is in suspect number 2 are siblings from the same parents, I might get a match when they're not the same person because I didn't sample the DNA, enough of the markers in the DNA. And then we still have another problem. What if crime scene? I'm going to put suspect number 2 in jail for this crime scene, but suspect number 2 is the identical twin of the person in question. They're going to have the same DNA. Now, what do you do? It's all probability of certainty. It's not absolute proof. Now, it might be high probabilities. Say, well, probability of the sun coming up tomorrow. Almost 100%, right? But there's that higher probability that you might have a heart attack, get hit by a car, die from something else. Sun's not coming up for you, is it? Didn't think about that one when you were thinking about the sun coming up, did you? You thought I meant the earth was going to quit moving or the sun was going to be obliterated. Those are also possibilities. We could get hit by some sort of giant meteorite or asteroid that we didn't see coming. Could be, what's that planet, Xenon or whatever the heck that is, Planet X? Might have been out of its orbit. It's coming to destroy us. I've seen that movie. Earth won't be here tomorrow. Sun won't come up. Oh, Joe, come on. That's silliness. Yep. We get to a point sometimes where we forget to account for the fact that the sun coming up tomorrow is nothing more than a probability. That's science, folks. And yet we have been conditioned to think of it very differently. Why? Because it suits a political purpose. In short, science, garbage in, garbage out. And even when you do everything perfectly and analyze as objectively as humanly possible, real science, people who understand what it is and its limitations, must be humble enough to allow for the probability that they missed something. What? Probability that they missed something. Something for which they don't even know to look. We've discussed this before, called blind spots. I've got them. Everybody has. Well, what if the scientist has blind spots? Let me give you a good one. It is an impossibility that the supernatural be included in our equation of gravity. So therefore, dark matter must be in this material world. We just can't find it. It's 90% of all matter in the world. We just can't find it. Yo, mister, you think you know science? What if the dark matter is in the dimensions that we can't access? Well, yes, now that's a possibility, but you can't see, feel, touch, or do anything with those dimensions, right? Well, no, but if the dark matter's there, then that would fit our theory. Yeah, but that we could call that supernatural, couldn't we? But well, by definition, that's supernatural definition you just gave us, right? You're trying to confuse things, son. You don't understand the science. Think hard. You've seen that or some form of that exact conversation on the news in the last 2 years, 3 years. You've seen some form of it where everybody turned around and said, yes, Mr. Scientist is right. You don't understand the problem. When it's Mr. Scientist that just got himself caught in his own trap. Oops. And you know you've seen it. It happened a whole bunch with the COVID and the jabs and the vaccine. Oh, we read one yesterday. Well, if you want to kill yourself, cool, we'll help you. Have you been jabbed? Well, why do I need to be jabbed? I want to die. Yes, but if we don't jab you, you might die from the wrong cause. What's that got to do with anything? You don't understand the situation. Just get jabbed and then we'll kill you. It's a parallel argument. You're being controlled. Manipulation all the time. Science is one of the things they're using to do it. If you do not thoroughly understand science, how it works, proper understanding of what science is supposed to be, like when I give you proper understandings of logic, try to explain the limitations of logic, what it can and cannot do for us, and how it can be used to serve any purpose we want it to. Science is the same way because science is just a variation of philosophy of logic. That's another reason we went back to the history of science to show you it goes all the way back to the Greeks, who are known for their logic, their reason. Remember, the original definition of science was basically just another word for reason, what you can know and how certain you are of it, and all methods by which you get there. But the scientists wanted to exclude the Greek form where I try to reason my way to knowledge. No, I can't have that. Well, then you have no certainty of what the good life or the best life is, or you can't test what the purpose of life is. And that's why science is dead. Doesn't allow for the things it can't test. That's why we're doing this class. Guess what? By the definition and explanations of science and the scientific method that we are given to today by Merriam-Webster and people like Fauci, we cannot use science to discover any true knowledge about anything prior to the time that accurate data was collected according to the exact same scientific understanding that we're using today. This is because we were not there to observe it. So we cannot be sure of the question at hand. We cannot test it. We have no direct data about the question. We cannot draw sound, valid, or rational conclusions. Therefore, all attempts to do so are by definition fallacious. Joe, what the heck did you just say? Oh, this is easy. Do you remember when I told you that climate change is a conspiracy theory? Remember that day last Thursday? Or that evolution is a conspiracy theory? You know why I told you that? Because they're both fallacious. They're both pushed on you as being fact when they cannot be proven in any way, shape, or form. What? Science is. No, it has not. Well, the Earth is warm. Yeah, maybe the Earth is warming, but the same science says the Earth used to be a lot warmer in the past. Was man running around warming things up then? Well, Mr. Neanderthal was throwing the coal into the furnace and stoking the fire. Oh my God, I gotta heat the world up, gotta heat the world up. Then how'd that happen? I don't know. I just know man did it. No, you don't. No, you don't. If you can't tell me how it happened in the past, you can't tell me how it's happening now. Well, yeah, okay. How? You don't know all the data. You are making assumptions. Ask you me. Same thing with evolution. Were you there to see the rabbit turn into the jackalope? Nope. But I got the fossil. No, you don't. You have your interpretation of that fossil record. You don't even know how that fossil was formed. You have a guess. Guesses upon guesses upon guesses produces what? Less and less certainty of outcome, of correctness in your conclusions. Whoopsie. We build entire curriculum for our school children around flawed theories. We're forcing global changes on the entire world's economy based on something that I can make a more I can make a stronger case that it is climate change is political rather than actual physical. I can make a case with less error of margin of error for climate change being politically motivated than the scientists can make saying that it's caused by man. Case in point, they still don't know if CO2 causes increased temperature or if it's a latent effect of increased temperature, meaning it comes after the fact. What? Yes. But I thought it was a greenhouse gas. They haven't even proven that. It's a guess. You've got to dig into this stuff. And you're starting to find out that most of these theories that your whole world is being turned on its head for are guesses upon guesses upon guesses with somebody in a lab coat that comes out and says, the science says destroy the economy or we're all going to die from COVID. Fine. Let 20% die. You don't destroy an entire community and society to save people that if you would treat them the way you normally treated them, would have lived, most of them would have lived anyhow. Those of us who understand these things that we're covering, like today, logic, science, things like that, we're labeled conspiracy theorists or kooks or wackos or ignorant. Why? Because we know that the voices with the biggest bully pulpit and the media jumping up and down in their little skimpy little skirts and their little tutu bottoms with their pom-poms going, yes, yes, Fauci right, you be wrong, rah, 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 go team, go. We know they're full of crap, and we know why they're full of crap, and we can explain it. So we've got to be silenced. So they marginalize us because they're not allowed to just kill us yet. Of course, if you watch what's going on in Canada, it's coming to a town near you very soon. They're just going to label you, Joe, have you been jabbed? No. Well, you're criminally insane. We're going to put you in an institution. Oh, you're in the institution? You're a drag on society. Let's just euthanize you. So that was a convenient way to get rid of your political opponents, wasn't it? It's all legal because we passed laws. Oh, by the way, science can't actually test any of that either. What's the best form of government? What's morality? Science can't test any of that. Claims to, but by its own definition, that's outside of sense. It's nonsense. So it's not true knowledge, which means feels good, do it according to the science. Because there can be no such thing as morality. That's just something you made up. See, you can't feel it, touch it, do anything with it. Yeah. We got more. When we come back from our break, we're going to eventually get to answering Mr. Ford's question about why I say his science is a religion. He's not going to like me very much, but I think by the time we get there, I'll be able to prove it to you. Or at least, if nothing else, get you to understand why I say it. Cool beans, huh? It's great stuff. Let's take a break. Go with this one today. Makes me feel like I'm waiting in line at the Buzz Lightyear show at Disney to go shoot Zorg. I love it. Yeah, if you've never been there, you won't understand. But anyhow, back into the show. I got to get the order. See, I told you weren't doing too good today. That's two. I'm shutting up. Anyhow, got to get the Arctic tortoise to make me a little thing that we can tag onto the end there whenever I want. A little 1 minute clip tells you all that crap that I have to go through. You're watching on the Freedom Networks with an X and blah, 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 blah. So we can just get that all out of the way. Maybe we'll get some Jamaican dude to tell us all about it. Hey, question from the class, comment from the class. Scientists can disagree, but it is a matter of interpretation of data. Bingo, James. Perfect. So which one's right? We got 5 scientists in a room. They all disagree on the same data. What do you do with that? See? Now you need somebody like me, a philosopher, to come in there and sort that out for you. And say, well, here's why we can put a little more faith in this idea and less faith in that conclusion and blah, blah, blah. And that's because scientists study just that part of logic that pertains to their scientific method. They don't look at the rest of it. Philosophers, that's all we do. Logic. That's our meat and butter. Anyhow, time to get going again. Here's where we were. Well, we started with, guess what? Can't do all this mess. We go to, guess what else that means? Yep, you guessed it. Creation of the universe theory. Fallacious. Evolution theory. Fallacious. Carbon-14 dating. Fallacious. What? Oh, yeah, we're going to get to that. That's really cool. You can't trust that. The guy who invented it said so. Huh? Yeah. Didn't know that, did you? Do a quick, don't use Google. Go to DuckDuckGo. Reliability of carbon-14 dating. See what you find. You're going to find a lot of people who know what they're talking about telling you, yeah, you can't rely on it. Here's why. I think I even put one of those articles in your show notes. Go look for it. It also places modern discovery about quantum mechanics in the same category as Newton's explanation of gravity, where he dismissed asking why and just described what is. Yeah, by the modern definition, quantum mechanics is nonsense because it doesn't describe why, where, from, where's it come from, how's it work, blah, blah, blah. It just describes what is. And then it only describes what is after they've introduced factors that aren't present in our world today. Say, well, when we create all this energy into the quantum, the accelerator here, energy that's just not possible anywhere else but a star, and in some cases, even more than a star. Oh, look, things do weird stuff. Well, yeah, man, you're artificially manipulating it in a way that doesn't happen in the natural world. Well, yeah, but we're trying to test the way we're simulating conditions from, when time began. No, you're not. You're simulating a swag. Well, not even a swag. You're simulating a wag of the way things were when time began. What the heck are you talking about, Joe? WAG, wild aid guess. And then everything you do after that is certainty because it's science and you can't question us. You don't know squat about the existence, the conditions in this universe when it first began. Heck, you guys can't even agree on when it began or if it ever had a beginning. You think it was infinite. Logisticians have already proven that's impossible. But who cares about that? Philosophy's dead, according to Hawkins, who we spent a show proving is an idiot in that regard, at any rate. And we did a good job. And we don't even have all these fancy little degrees and letters after our name. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go find that show. We destroyed Homeboy on that day. Mr. Genius in the wheelchair, trounced him. A little more about carbon-14 dating and other things that don't stand up to logical evaluation. Okay, real quick, let's dump this for the moment. You go to carbon-14 dating, there's 2 little problems with it. One, everything we do with carbon dating is based on the assumption that the rate of production of carbon has maintained the same. It's been the same throughout all of history, not human, all of history. Since the planet began, since the universe began, the rate of carbon-14 production in the atmosphere was the same, and the rate of its absorption into biological entities is the same. We now know that that is a flawed assumption. Now, let me just throw a what if at you. What if You lived in an environment where the world wasn't the same way back then as it is today, and the carbon 14 production was slower, the absorption was slower, or the things you're trying to test were under a whole bunch of water. Guess what you'd find? You'd find out that today they'd test as being a lot older than they are. Why would that be important? Well, I'll let you do the math on that one. If you don't think that way, you won't get it. But if you have ears to hear, you know what I just told you. But now there's another problem with carbon 14 dating. The guy who invented the process said that, well, it should work when carbon 14 has reached equilibrium in the atmosphere, but not before that. It's got to reach a state of equilibrium, where it's not going up and down all over the place because the Earth is still evolving. He said that should have happened at about 24,000 years old. He said, problem is, when he invented it 200 years, 100 years ago, something like that, the carbon 14 in the atmosphere wasn't at a state of equilibrium yet. So maybe his math was wrong by 4 to 5 billion years. Or maybe there's an assumption somewhere that shouldn't have been made, or somebody's missing something. See where I'm getting at? Lots of guesses treated with absolute certainty. I'm absolutely certain that if I French kiss that light socket, nothing's going to happen to me. Okay, you go ahead and try it. They ain't going to work out well. Here's your sign. Oh, well, it's science. It is. Water crossing the positive and negative lines of a live electrical line, and nothing's going to happen to you. You're going to act as the ground. Saliva. Okay, have at it, baby. I'm going to get the video camera. Gonna make you famous on YouTube tonight. But it's absolute science, Joe. No, it isn't. It's assumption upon assumption off of faith, called science. And it's used to mess up society all the time. No humility. Human nature. We can't study that. Yep, because that's not hard science. That's pseudoscience. They call it soft science nowadays. So that's carbon 14 dating. Oh my gosh, looky here. Did you hear this one yet? Seriously, have you heard the general theory of relativity is no more? Oh yeah, these three idiots in the middle proved that with an observation and a speculation of a theory. They haven't tested the theory. They observed something that doesn't happen in normal physics, not as we understand it. But that was enough to declare Einstein wrong. Uh-huh. Einstein's theory of general relativity, only the most tested and affirmed theory in all of human history. Yet these little geniuses claim to have disproven it based on a few observations and a theory they cannot properly test. At best, their claim needs to be proven at least as many times as Einstein's has been before we accept their claim. But we got people out there running around now saying, yep, disproved Einstein, the universe doesn't have a beginning, all sorts of craziness. And that's because they're going back to the universe as an organism theory. Back to the stuff of Woodrow Wilson, where anything means anything you want it to be. Yeah. Yes, good comment, Jacob. It's not an exact science, but they are getting better. I like that. It just ruined the world if I'm remembering right in that movie, 12 Monkeys. Yeah. Next, some thoughts on how we set up scientific experiments. This is going to illustrate one of the problems we have with science. One of the things I'm trying to explain to you and get you to see. I'm going to use a show, one of the episodes of MythBusters as my example. They had a pig carcass that they bought. They were wanting to prove or disprove the myth that the end of a broken cable can sever a man's leg. Well, hold on just a second. We'll come back to that. James William Holt, water jug. Even poor scientific theories can lead to scientific breakthroughs. For example, Paul Dirac mathematically predicted that the anti-electron or positron and proposed that the absence of an electron in a sea of electrons would have the same physical properties of an electron with the opposite charge. He was wrong about the electron sea, yet his theory bore fruit shortly thereafter with the actual discovery of positrons. Never said it doesn't work that way, James. That's not the point. The point is, we act as though it's certainty when if we were humble, we would know it's not. That's the whole point of today. If we're going to set public policy and affect people's lives and free will based on things that we do not know for sure, or even with a reasonable amount of certainty, we shouldn't be doing it. And climate change and all the things that are happening right now, that is firmly in that realm. Climate change, that's junk science. And we will address that on a Conspiracy Thursday one day. And we'll do it on a Conspiracy Thursday as satire so that we might even get Dr. Evil to do that show for us for the same reason he did his first one. A lot less likely to get us banned. So, Mythbusters. The myth is that a severed cable can cut a man's leg off. So what did they do? They went and bought themselves a pig. And I'm going to drop this down so you can see me better. And they stretched out this cable, put it under a lot of tension on one end with a device that could release the end. And then they put the pig right next to the cable because they wanted to make sure that the pig would get hit by the cable. So they put it right next to the cable. Ha! And then they ran the experiment several times. And lo and behold, it didn't work. It didn't cut the pig in half. So myth busted, right? Wrong. What? Wrong. Why? We'll get to that. Here's a story for you. 8 American sailors on aircraft carriers injured as landing cable snaps. ABC News by Luis Martinez, March 18th, 2016. Well, Joe, none of them had a leg cut off. Nope. Broken. Read the article. Almost cut off, but there's a reason it didn't even break their legs. It didn't cut their legs off. There's a very specific thing that has to happen for this myth to actually be tested. Problem is, it's not a myth. You dig back far enough, you will find examples of people losing parts of their body because of a broke cable. Because of a broke cable end. The problem for Mythbusters is how they set up their experiment. Dr. Mix, PhD, to the rescue. He was my physics teacher. I barely escaped his class. I passed the second semester with 1 point over a D. But I learned how to set up my problems. So when I saw that Mythbusters episode, I knew they set it up wrong. Angular momentum. This is the problem. It's going to cause there to be a lot more kinetic energy in the free end of the snapped cable than there is in the length of the cable itself. There's also a couple of other factors going on here, but what I'm talking about is when the cable snaps, the point of highest energy where it'll do the most damage if it hits you is on the very end of that cable and nowhere else. So by setting up the experiment the way they did so that when the cable snapped, it immediately encountered the pig carcass, farther back, like halfway through the cable, halfway behind the snapped end, halfway back, they put the pig carcass right next to the cable. What happens is it causes the cable to bleed its energy. And the energy is now used, instead of the whipping of the cable, the energy is now used to wrap the cable around the pig carcass. And this is a snake or coil effect. It's well known in physics. If you've been through physics class, you know what's going on here. In order to have properly done this test, they had to find a way to put the pig carcass way out on the end where when the cable came out and it's got released, quote unquote snapped, when they release it to do the snap effect, the very end of that cable way out away from, the anchored end would hit the carcass at highest speed with the highest energy. Now, had they done it that way, they probably would have gotten a very different effect. And I think what they also did is they set it up so that the cable cut a man in half. Well, I don't know if a cable's ever cut a man in half at the waist or chest, but I know it has removed legs. I know stories of World War II where the landing cables from the airplanes on the carriers did that. So they set their problem up wrong. Guess what? Just like we said earlier, if I set the problem up wrong, my results are guaranteed to be wrong. And if I find them correctly, if the results are done correctly, it's because I screwed up in my analysis and the blind squirrel finds a nut. That doesn't mean you should be building policy on it. Doesn't mean you should be making it as a matter of faith. So, faulty or missing data leads to flawed experiments, which leads to incorrect conclusions, which results in absolute certainty in the truth of something that is not true. And faulty or missing data can also be faulty assumptions of what the problem is or what you're testing. Scientists should learn from the Christian founders. And to quote the Dos Equis guy, stay humble, my friends, instead of staying thirsty. Which brings us to our final question for the day. Has the science become a religion? Dum, da dum, dum, dum. Before we get going, I didn't bother defining religion for you, but I'm going to give you a quick off the cuff. If you trust something, if that's the thing you trust your whole life with, you place all your faith in that thing. That's going to make meaning to your whole world. I don't care what it is. I trust my dog. I trust my dog for everything. Dog's going to feed me. He's going to care for me. He's going to love me. Everything I ever need in the world comes from the dog. You're worshiping the dog. If you worship it, it's a god. So whatever you trust with your life and go to, whatever it is, you worship that. That's the definition of worship, or it's an operational definition of worship, which is why we say if you trust the government for everything you need and do and blah, 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 you're worshiping the beast, because that's how the Bible defines a government, as a beast. Kingdom, government, beast, because it devours, it destroys. Founding fathers, government is a fire, it's a consuming evil. That's why you nail it down, you limit it, because if you let it run crazy, it'll destroy everything. Where do you think they got the idea from? They knew it was a beast. So if you trust government for everything, welfare, healthcare, everything, government's the answer to everything, you worship the beast. Progressives worship the beast by definition. If you worship the beast, you bear its mark. Well, that's worship. Or at least it's an operational definition of worship. So, metaphysics. What? Metaphysics. This is in your show notes. What the heck is metaphysics? Well, this is first published Monday, September 10th, 2007. Substantive revision on Friday, October 31st, 2014. Blah, 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 blah. You'll find it in your show notes. Let's go over this. This says, it's not easy to say what metaphysics is. Oh boy, more science problems. Ancient and medieval philosophers might have said that metaphysics was, like chemistry or astrology, to be defined by its subject matter. Metaphysics was the science that studied being as such, or the first cause of things, or things that do not change. It is no longer possible to define metaphysics that way for two reasons. First, a philosopher who denied the existence of those things that had once been seen as constituting the subject matter of metaphysics, first cause or unchanging things, who would now consider to be making thereby a metaphysical assertion. Huh? I'll explain in a minute. Hold on. Second, there are many philosophical problems that are now considered to be metaphysical problems, or at least partly metaphysical problems, that are in no way related to first cause or unchanging things. The problem of free will, for example, or the problem of mental and the physical. The first three sections of this entry examine a broad selection, blah, 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 blah. I put that in there for you. Basically, metaphysics is dealing with nonsense, or what science would call nonsense. Now, originally, it was those things that could not be changed or stayed the same. Like the existence of the universe doesn't change with discovery. Science can't say it's infinite. No, it had a beginning. No, now it's back to infinite again. Yeah, so much for falsifiability of science. Metaphysics would say, well, based on what we know of the universe, in the logical sense, and logic has to be the same whether this universe exists or not, because of its very nature, this universe had to have a start. And if it had a start, then it had to be caused by something. And that something had to be outside of the universe's constraints. In other words, the unmoved mover. Something that did something without having an equal and opposite reaction. Ergo, the universe has a beginning and there must be a creator. That was the Greek philosophers, folks. The very founding fathers of modern scientific principle. If you listen to modern physics, scientists, and you ignore all the Christians that were in there. We're going to take a gamble on this phone call here, folks. Good morning, caller. You're on the road to Concord with Joe.
Hey Joe, thanks for taking my call. Hey, is there a snake behind you?
That's who we thought it was. He'll call back, I'm sure. Dodo Cop, if your problem is with Steve, keep your calls to Steve's show. We're not Steve. Anyhow, back to metaphysics. That deals with things like how did the universe, things that don't change by the nature of how do we define things. Aristotle, Socrates, Plato, these guys, they were trying to, how do I define something? What makes a cat a cat? The different forms of atoms and things. That's what they were dealing with, metaphysics there. And we read a quote by John Adams not too long ago, and he said, by my metaphysics, morality is blah, 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 blah. Morality belongs in the realm of metaphysics. Basically, what they're saying is it's a nonsensical logic or area of exploration and understanding and knowledge. It's what it is. So it's one of those things that modern science says isn't real knowledge. It's nonsense, supernatural, et cetera, et cetera. So here's your definition of metaphysics from Webster's today. It says a division of philosophy that is concerned with the fundamental nature of reality and being, and that include ontology, cosmology, and often epistemology, blah, 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 blah. Abstract philosophical studies, a study of what is outside of objective experience. That's what we're talking about. Now, where would this come into play in modern science? Anyway, what's ontology? That's a branch of metaphysics concerned with the nature and relationships of being. Being, the existence of reality, what it is and how it works. Well, this stuff is all not science according to the definition of science that we've read from Webster's itself and what most of us think of as science. So none of this is science. Metaphysics isn't science, except popular mechanics. Objective reality may not exist at all. Quantum physicists say reality might be in the eye of the observer, according to new research by Stanley Dimitropoulos, published June 29th, 2022. Yeah, huh? Or Stay Dimitropoulos. Not Stanley, Stay, or Stav, or whatever, I can't. Let me explain something here. First of all, whoever wrote this needs to go find themselves a philosopher to explain a few things to them. Because, well, let's just destroy this. Reality doesn't exist. It's all in the eye of the observer. Really? Then reality does exist. You just don't understand its nature. You think the observer defines it. Well, then there is a reality that explains the principles by which the observer defines it. And that's your objective reality. You see, he thought something up that he thinks sounds great and stops right there. He didn't dig down to the very rock bottom. So he built his little house on sifting sand, and some little idiot like Joe comes along and snatches the foundation out from under it, and his sand goes whoop, to the bottom of the pit. He might be right, but I'm not going to listen to his argument because it's founded on a fallacious precept, fallacious assumption. It's self-defeating. Look here. This is internally contradictory. Reality might be in the eye of the observer, according to new research. Well, then that's reality. Say there's no such thing. Objective reality may not exist because it's in the eye of the observer. That's the objective reality, that it's in the eye of the observer. Still exists. He made a universal statement that contradicts his conclusion. Fallacious. It's an unsound argument with invalid conclusions. And yet people are working on this now in the science. This is pagan way of looking at the world, which is exactly what I should expect to find today, seeing how our world is returning to paganism with all its uncertainties and craziness that goes along with it. This, in a nutshell, this was made by one of the members of your class. I'm not going to out him. If he wants credit for it, I'd be happy to give you his name. He'll decide on his own. But after listening to one of our classes, he wrote this down and shared it with me. This is perfect. The pagans among us. Pagan being you don't subscribe to the Bible, but you have belief systems. Science, that's their God. The science. Scientists are their priests. Labs are their temples. Lab coats are their holy garments. Abortions, that's their sacrifices or their sacraments. Colleges, there's their worship centers, their churches. Yes, this works. This works fine. Saying that a man can become a woman can become a man, that's another one of their sacraments now, like getting baptized. This is referring to crackpot science, theoretical science, that is illogical or evil. Theory of evolution, gender theory, climate change theory. This is a religion, a cult with many followers, a part of this age. Yes, we've turned science into a religion. Just like many people, such as Ayn Rand, turned logic and reason into a religion. Good morning, Mr. Ford. How can we help you?
Hey, Joe, how you doing today, man?
Doing all right, sir. How about yourself?
Pretty good, interesting show, like always. I really do enjoy it, even though we might disagree. I enjoy it. Let's ask you a quick question. Hey, first of all, I'm happy to see there's other people that irritate you. Anyway, man. I mean, I'm not here to fuss. I mean, y'all believe what y'all do, and that's fine. But it just seems to me that y'all, when I say y'all, I mean you, Aaron, Spots, and people, y'all seem to think everybody has to worship a god. I mean, am I on the right track there?
By definition, we all worship. Now, where I think that you and I are disagreeing on is how we define the word God. And that's kind of why I went
how
into...
you said it. Put your whole trust in something,
Yes. That's an operational definition of worship.
Yeah. Okay. I don't put my whole trust in science or even myself. I know I'm, like you said, man is flawed. So I know I have some opinions that is wrong. And, I just find it kind of weird that, some people in your audience think that everybody has a God.
Well, if you understand the operational definition of worship, we all do have a God. Now, you say you don't worship yourself, you don't worship science, you don't worship government. If you think that you're not worshiping, if you think you're not placing your trust in something, even if you're just going to place it in faith, faith, not faith as in faith in a God, but fate as in, what's going to happen, karma, there's your God, brother. The operational definition would be, well, I'm not going to trust anything. Then you're trusting fate, karma, or however the universe works.
Well, you said something a while ago, and now you didn't say it. You said your whole trust. And I agree, I don't put my whole trust, but yes, I do trust things. You're correct. But I do not put my whole trust in those things. Does that make it
You're assuming because it's not unified, as not homogeneous, like saying, oh, my whole trust is in government. You're still putting your whole trust in something. Notice I just gave you a different thing that you're whole trusting in. Okay, well, I'm going to trust government here. Well, that works by happenstance too a lot of times, even though there's agenda in it. Well, and I'm going to trust myself here, and I'm going to trust this there, and I'm not going to have any trust on that thing. That's what I meant by karma. You're very Hinduistic or Buddhist in that sense. You're just going to go along to get along. The trust is there that things will just somehow work out. It might not be what you're thinking of. You might not have the defined philosophy of life there that you're wanting to nail down on me, but that does not mean it doesn't still exist. It's still there. It's just very loosely defined, but it's still there. By definition, the operational definition of a God, all you're looking at is a different God. And because it's one you don't recognize doesn't mean that it doesn't exist.
Well, I would have to think about that. I mean, you gave me something to think about.
That's all I can ask.
But hey, man, good talk. You have a good one, Joe.
Thank you, sir. You have a good day and stay safe.
Yep. Good.
Thank you, Mr. Ford. And John, when you call up to actually have a rational conversation, I hope you'll realize I'm willing. I'll give you the time. Good back and forth. Neither of us convince the other, and we don't have to. We just proved, John, that what I tell the audience is true. What I tell my class is true. You don't have to agree with me, but we get to think. We get to talk to each other. That's all I'm asking. That's all I've ever asked. Now, when we have people like Dodo Cop call up, Mr. Ford, understand, he doesn't aggravate me per se, personally. He aggravates me that he disrupts the board and there are other members here watching, other people here trying to learn or trying to get something out of this. He disrupts that for his own personal gain or enjoyment or whatever reason. That aggravates me that somebody would be that rude and that selfish. That's the point that aggravates me there. But as an individual, he no more aggravates me than the fly crawling across the table. Because to me, they're very little different, metaphysically. Okay. If we were in Catholic Church, I'd say, Dominic Abiscum, go in peace, because that was your lesson for today. I've been trying to follow the class notes, or not class notes, rather, the comments in the class. But that's the end of the lesson plan. That's where I had to go for you today. I got through it a little quicker. Wasn't speaking as slow, mostly because I know this subject matter and I was in faster normal mode. Blah, 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 blah. Could have drug it out, but then, and I'd be talking like Charlie all day, and Aaron Spikes be yelling at me to quit with that inbred accent. Hey, shush up, Charlie. I wasn't talking about you. Anyhow, if there are questions in the classroom, now would be the time to post them. If you have comments, suggestions, anything you would like to discuss, now is the time to call the phone, 229-469-0335. You can email them. We'll get to them later. If and when I have sufficient number or any emailed questions, I do cover those on Fridays. Ask Joe anything. I'll go over them. Otherwise, we're just going to find somehow to fill a little bit of time here. I would like to share something with you. It's just an observation. It's not an accusation or anything else. It's not an observation of individuals or anything like that. But I find this curious. The numbers of people who are watching us on Rumble are double and triple those who have been watching us on Twitch and Facebook combined. That's affirming to me. That warms my heart. If I've got 10 people, 12 people, 15 people watching on Rumble Facebook and Twitch combined, and I've got 27 to 30 watching me on Rumble, then the people who are going to Rumble understand why I'm doing this. And they're with me. Now, I got it. If you're on Twitch and you're on Facebook, I got it. Ease, convenience. I got that. But don't dance in the devil's playground and then expect for him to let you live the way you want to live. Sooner or later, you're going to have to pay the piper. So Twitch and Facebook, do not think that they don't belong to our ideological enemies. I know. I've seen it. The argument was, at least one of us has made it, and I know if one makes it openly, others believe it. We should stay on Facebook because you have the most chance of convincing somebody of something there. I've been on Facebook for a long time. I've convinced one person of something that changed his mind, and then it only changed it a little bit. That was Jimmy Zinker. I have not convinced anybody else of anything that changed their mind significantly the entire time I've been working on Facebook. I don't buy that argument that we need to stay there because we'll reach more people. It's very easy to find me here on Rumble, and we'll have an audience that will be walking the walk. They're here on Rumble now. It took them a little more time. You got to download the app. You got to learn to use a new program and blah, 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 blah. The comment section doesn't work as well. I got it. I get it. It's not what you're used to. Got that. Understand. It's not going to be. It's not YouTube. That's the whole point. It's not YouTube. It's not Facebook. But it's friendlier to our mission here at the Road to Concord and what we do. Comments are still made. You can respond to each other. You can up or down a comment. Facebook and YouTube don't give you the ability to vote somebody down. Well, YouTube does. You can negatively vote on a comment there. So we'll give them that. But the whole point here, though, is that Rumble was made for folks like myself to have an alternative platform to get our voice out that's not going to be silenced just because we say something that the owners of the platform don't like. So you're walking the walk when you're watching me on Rumble. Now, you may not be able to get it. You're on Facebook, Twitch. I'm not talking to you that way. It's not meant to be negative. It isn't. But I am strongly inviting you to join us here. Even if all it is you're going to still watch on Twitch and Facebook, have a Rumble account and subscribe. That way, if nothing else, you'll always know where we're at when we're on. If something else happens, it's called diversification, redundant systems. One point I wanted to be an aeronautical engineer. You have redundant systems in your aircraft. And that's because if one fails, the other one's supposed to keep working so that you don't crash. Do any of you watch the different shows of air crashes and how they happen and why? Do any of you remember maybe the story of the, I think it was American Airlines. It was a L-11011, I believe, had 3 engines, one of them in the tail, up in the vertical fin. And the fan blade from that engine flew off and it severed all the hydraulic lines on the airplane. And then they had to land it, I think it was at St. Louis, and they had to land it using the throttles to steer it. Right at the very end, they crashed. But a whole bunch of people lived. Great piloting. I don't know if you know the story, but that's the thing. That plane had triple redundancy, but they ran all 3 systems right next to each other. So when one got taken out, the other 3 did. So that airplane's redundancy was very weak. So if my redundancy is YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch, and I piss one of them off, I'm likely to get banned on all 3 at some point because those folks coordinate with each other. The deal with Twitter and what's going on with Facebook and other places, Google, over the Hunter Biden laptop, we're proving. Matter of fact, us conspiracy theories have been proven right. Conspiracy theorists have been proven right about a lot of stuff since COVID came up. I mean, we're batting average is pretty darn near to 1 right now, or 1,000, however you baseball people count that. It's almost perfect. I don't see any apologies coming our way. Good morning, caller. You're on the road to Concord with Joe.
Hey, Joe, it's Sharky.
Sharky! He's real, folks. What's up, bro?
Hey, buddy. Hey, enjoying the show today. I liked that. I enjoyed John Ford and yours conversation because it helped me figure out something of a conversation I had a few days ago.
Okay.
Oh, and I love when this happens, when I hear you talking with somebody and then the exact same topic comes up that I've talked with somebody and the exact same argument. I know something's going on and I need to pay attention to it.
Well, somewhere along the line, we're doing something right. I'm hoping, assuming. So,
so here it is. So John Ford, he gave the exact same argument that someone else gave me as I was chatting online. And they said, and I quote, "I don't put my full trust in anything. I put a piece of trust in this and a piece of trust in this and a piece of trust in this." And when John Ford said that, and when I backlogged to that conversation I had with this young lady online, I was like, oh, polytheism.
Yes, that's a very good point. Yes.
Yeah.
Many gods.
I was thinking, okay, many idols, many little idols. And I thought of pagan worship throughout the ages, and a lot of pagan cultures, they wouldn't have one deity. You would walk into a temple and there would be hundreds of idols, hundreds of little tiny deities that they would kind of put a lot of their little trusts in.
Yeah, we covered that with Islam when the Kabbalah, that big black square that they like to circle. Originally, there were 360 idols in there, one for every lunar day.
Yes, we were. That was on your Islam class.
Yes, sir.
But also, and this is where the conversation went with me and the gal online. I brought up to her because she kept repeating a phrase, and the phrase kept sticking in my head, and I'm like, I've heard that before. And I finally remembered what it was. She says, I'm just going to do what I want. I'm just going to do as I want. I'm going to do whatever I want because I can decide what's good and what's bad.
Where all people
and I
did
knew
whatever they thought was
right. Go ahead.
Where everyone did what they thought was right. That's out of scripture, bro.
Exactly. But also, Aleister Crowley came to mind.
Mhm.
And for those of you online that don't know who Aleister Crowley is, he was a very prominent Satanist who wrote a lot of literature and books for the occult. And one of the inscriptions on his most popular book is "Do as thou wilt," basically saying, do whatever you want.
Mm-hmm.
And all these fireflies or pieces of yarn started to connect in my mind, saying, oh, that's how we're returning to paganism. Not one pagan god, but polytheistic, many pagan gods, science being one of them.
Yep, that works. That's exactly what we should expect too, as in the days of Noah.
Yeah, cool stuff. And just want to say I'm enjoying Rumble. I had to ditch Twitch and I got booted off Facebook, so I guess it was meant to be.
Well, I appreciate it, Sharky. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, have a good day, brother.
You too, man. Bye-bye. So, no, what he's saying, John makes a comment. He says, oh, so y'all are saying that some trust is worship. No. What he was saying, okay, you put a little bit of trust in government. Government's one of your gods. You put a little bit of trust in yourself, then you're one of your gods. He's talking about polytheism. In ancient times, the pagans, they had a god for war. They had a god for fertility, love gods. They had gods of rain, et cetera, et cetera. They placed their trust in each one of those gods for those little areas. I was taking it to the conceptual idea. Sharky was explaining the exact same thing I was trying to tell you about, John, where I said, okay, you're just worshiping God of a different definition. He just came in and said, well, you could be worshiping many, which is polytheism. And it's still true. It all works. It's just that it's all conceptualization. It's if you reject the concepts, the ideas that we're talking about, well, then you got to replace them with something that I recognize. And it's not a knock on you, Mr. Ford, but nobody's done that yet. Everybody who's tried, all they really do is try to explain the concepts I've been sharing with you in a way that precludes my understanding, but it's still the same explanation. In other words, they're trying to box me out, my argument out of their reality, and yet they're accepting my argument. They just want me out of it. And that's fallacious argument. And that's why it's got nothing to do with you, Mr. Ford. Nobody's been ever able to do that in history, which is another reason that, the people saying there's no such thing as objective reality. If that were true, none of us could understand each other because we would all perceive things entirely differently. Now, some of us do that, but we're still able to understand each other because we know that there's a reality to this world. We just ignore it as much as possible, or a lot of us do. So, good call with Sharky. He does keep in touch with me. I chat back and forth to a lot of y'all. It's all up to you. I mean, you reach out with me, I'll reach out back to you. And if you're sincere, I don't care how much you disagree with me. Doesn't matter. I will treat you civilly. Hopefully, I just proved that. Mr. Ford and I have had some rather nasty conversations. We just had a really good one. I tend to be a mirror. I reflect what's given to me. I learned that in philosophy school. As a disciple of the Messiah, I should still work on that. I should always be civil no matter what. But that's one of my flaws. I don't know that it's a blind spot. I think that's just the Marine and the philosopher in me is just stubborn and refuses to change. Maybe that's an area where I still have to touch my knee to the ground. I'll work on it. Anyhow, lost my train of thought of where I was before the call, but that's irrelevant. We can figure that out from there. That's right. I was talking about people watching us on Rumble. Oh, by the way, man, our numbers are up today, which is surprising the heck out of me. They've started to climb again since I've gone to Rumble. So we've had as many as 42 of us watching between all of them today, or at least showing. And I have reason to believe there's more people that watch than just get shown. I think the viewers are those who subscribe to the channels and are logged in and watching actively, because there are people who talk to me about the show that say they watched it live that I did not see them anywhere in the registry of people on there. So we're going to talk to Mr. Ford one more time, see how this goes. Yes, sir, Mr. Ford.
Yeah, Joe, it's me again. Real quick.
Yes.
Two things. You said your numbers are up today, and I just couldn't resist to call in. I was going to type it in, but hey, man, you're welcome for me helping your numbers.
Excuse me? I didn't catch that.
Your when you said your numbers are up on your show,
Mm-hmm.
people that's listening and watching, I couldn't resist. I'm sorry to call in and tell you. I was going to comment it on Facebook, but I thought you would like it better. Hey, man, you're welcome for me helping you with your numbers.
Oh, well, thank you, sir. No, appreciate
Yeah.
that. Thank you.
Yeah, I thought you might like that. But hey, on a serious note, hey, yeah, we have had our downs, and that was mainly my fault. But hey, yeah, I'm all for civil discord. I think that's the number one thing we need today with this political environment and really every environment. I mean, we just can't talk to each other. So,
I agree
yeah, I'm
with
all
you.
up for that, and I appreciate the attitude back.
No, totally agree with you on that last statement. 100%.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'll be here no matter how weird I think the show is. I mean, that interests me. So, hey, keep them coming.
Thank you, sir. I'm happy to be your Art Bell.
Yes, sir. Have a good one.
All right. I've enjoyed that today. Comment in the classroom from James William Holt, aka Water Jug, said with affection, self-named. We didn't give him that name. He did. He can explain it one day if he wants to. Says, I feel like people that reject science and purposely embrace scientific illiteracy are very easily swayed to embrace crazy beliefs like flat earth theory or ancient aliens. I've seen it in my own family. It's exhausting. Amen, amen, amen. And pass the biscuits, Water Jug. I agree. Yep, totally. Notice today, folks, this was not a rejection of science or the scientific method. This was a rejection of bad science or people who claim science that don't even know what the heck they're talking about. Just like I do not reject reason, I reject bad reasoning. There's a difference. It's important. All of y'all should embrace the good and reject the bad. Now, what you decide is good and bad, that's up to you. You've got free will. I don't seek to trample it. I don't even, I mean, ugh. If Dodo Cop were to quit calling in just to be stupid, I'd sit and talk to him and be just as civil with him as I am with Mr. Ford or anybody else who calls in who wants to actually have a conversation. I reflect what's given to me. If you call in to disrupt my class, you better expect the Marine in me to fire back. It's just going to happen. Now, I know I'm not supposed to return insult with insult. That's what it means to turn the other cheek, by the way, in Scripture. But I'm also supposed to defend that which has been placed in my care to defend. That's also scriptural. So what do you do when two commands conflict with each other? It's almost like there's weightier matters of the law. Subject for tomorrow. Yeah, the Torah, the law, the teachings of Yahweh. Oh boy. If you're a believer, you want to be here tomorrow. If you think the law is done away, nailed to the cross, dead, is no more, it's by faith and faith alone, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, am I going to show you some passages in your Bible that you have missed? Just like, faith is new, we're now under grace. Oh, that's interesting. It said that in the Old Testament. What? Yeah, the Old Testament says you're under grace. Oh, yeah, you thought that was new, didn't you? No, you didn't read Jeremiah and the New Covenant very closely, did you? It says that what's going to be new is renewing the covenant. I'm going to place my law. I'm going to take it off those cold, dead stones tablets, and I'm going to put it into the living flesh, your heart. What? Yeah, I'm going to take my law, not do away with, take it from the cold, dead stones that I wrote on, and I'm going to place it into the living heart of flesh. He just moved it. He didn't do away with it. Oops. Yeah. So just like a lot of people get cranky with me when I actually have the audacity to read the founding fathers instead of my historians, yeah, I have the audacity to actually read the Bible instead of what my preacher tells me. And a lot of times I find out my historian's wrong about the founders, just like my preacher rather is wrong about the scriptures. Find your compass, your true north. What do you really want to believe about the founding of this country? Who are the ultimate authorities? Go right to the source. Are you going to believe the Bible? Okay, why? Well, I worship the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Okay, then the Bible, the scriptures are your compass, not your preacher. Yeah. Ignorance of the law is not an excuse to the law. Just because you don't know it isn't going to get you forgiven. So if I go from this state to another, let's say I've got a concealed carry permit and the other state doesn't allow me, it doesn't let my permit transmit over, and I didn't check that and I get myself arrested, my fault. I'm the idiot. They'll say, well, Joe, you didn't know about the law. You won't be judged. Oh, I did know about the law. I knew it was my responsibility to check. That's the law. Mm-hmm. So ignorance is no excuse. Works in Scripture the same way. So, but yes, the numbers are up, and I am extremely happy with that because it means I'm doing something to help folks. And yes, one of the emails I don't know how to answer. The gentleman told me that I'm not only helping him think and entertaining him at the same time, which I don't know how the heck I entertain you. He didn't use that word, but that was the gist of how I read his email to me. But he also told me I'm helping him strengthen his walk with Messiah, with Yeshua, yet Jesus. Oh man, that's humbling. That's no greater compliment or blessing can you give me than those words. It means that I was a good servant to both you and the Messiah. Wow. I still don't know how to answer that, man. I'm going to figure it out, but I've been told I can talk all day long, never run out of things to say. I don't know how to answer that email. I don't have the words. I'll figure it out. God will give me something. You folks just, you don't get it. You humble me. I'm amazed. If I never ever talk to more than 40 people a day. I don't know that I can afford to do this for a living, but we'll figure something out. But jeez. Me? I'm one of the most flawed people on the face of this planet. What the heck do you guys find worth watching and listening to with me? I'm not going to ever, and this is not the hyperbole that I talked about a few shows ago. I'm never going to understand that. I mean, I know what you tell me. I don't understand what spark it is in you that sees it. So I chalk it up to whether you believe or not, somehow or another, I've bent my knee sufficiently that the Holy Spirit works through me, and that part of the Holy Spirit in you recognizes it. So it's just spirit listening to spirit, and I just happen to be the speaker. Now, I can accept that. If that's the case, then cool. Maybe I'll be blessed enough to hear, well done, faithful and obedient servant. I don't expect to, because I know myself too well. Tomorrow, Worship Wednesday. Last of the tough shows for a while. This one's tough because most of us have been told differently. Been told that you don't have to worry about the law no more. You better read your scriptures a lot closer than that. Say, well, I found one essay or one lady who argues, like, for example, 1 Corinthians, Paul proves that he doesn't listen to the law. 1 Corinthians was written somewhere between 48 AD and 56 AD. And then on his trial before he's sent to Rome, 60 AD, we know when that was, at least 6 years, or 4 years rather, later than the latest possible date for 1 Corinthians. So 4 years later, Paul tells Agrippa, or whatever the heck it is, I've never offended the law of the Jew. Never once in his life has he broken Torah or offended it. You know, he tries to keep Torah. So much for the argument that he said he did away with Torah in 1 Corinthians. You've got a problem. And when I went back and read it, she's interpreting 1 Corinthians her way, not Paul's. We'll address some of that tomorrow. We'll go over the show from last week in the first hour. In the second hour, we're going to address a lot of Paul's statements. This is why a lot of good, faithful people reject Paul, say he's a false apostle, because they say he created a fake religion. He didn't. Everybody forgets Peter's warning. Paul is tough, hard to understand. Why? Because he's a Pharisee of Pharisees. He knows the law. And now he knows how to properly understand it and apply it because he studied with the Messiah for 3 years. Roughly the time we believe that the apostles studied with the Messiah. Gee, go figure. So yeah, tomorrow's going to be a toughie. I'm looking forward to it. I hope you'll be here. We'll do the best we can to get through it together. I'll have the phone off tomorrow. If you want to comment, you'll need to use the comment sections. We don't need interference with tomorrow's show. So, I love each and every one of you. Thank you very much for today, Mr. Ford. I appreciate it. Thank you. I hope all of y'all will be here tomorrow. Until then, stay safe. See you tomorrow.